Welcome to Chax Poetry Talks, a podcast brought to you by Chax Press. This is Charles Alexander. I'm your host and speaker. You can find Chax Press online at chax.org. And now, the podcast. Hello again. When I last spoke, I was speaking about William Blake, and I'm afraid that it wouldn't even be possible in 3 hours or so to do a lot of justice to Blake, and certainly in 15 minutes, not even to the work of the Songs of Innocence and Experience. So I decided to return to him now and stick with this early part of his work, because I might save the prophetic or visionary poems, maybe all are visionary, but the long books of Blake till later. But I didn't want to quite leave the Songs of Innocence and Experience yet. I have said that Blake is complex in his vision of what is innocence, what is experience. I had a friend recently hire me to teach a course in part on Blake, which I'll be doing in the fall. And the reason she said she hired me, she just, as soon as I had said Blake was a possibility, she pictured the Tyger. And I think there's sometimes a view of Blake's Tyger as this beautifully printed tiger in Blake's colorful etching, that this is a poem that is great for children. I'm not so sure about that at all. Let me read the poem, and then I'll go back to it to talk about it a little bit. And I want to mainly focus on 2 poems from the Songs of Experience today. So the Tyger. Tyger, Tyger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer? What the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil? What dead grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tyger, Tyger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? So this is a poem about something terrible. Not necessarily that the tiger is what is terrible, although I think it plays on probably our fear of such an animal in the forests of the night, but what could possibly have made such a thing? What could frame such fearful symmetry? With what dread hand? What hammer? What chain? How dare its deadly terrors clasp? This is a poem that, should be read with some force, and it should feel like a force. It is in no way a poem that is innocent. And of course, it is in the Songs of Experience as opposed to the Songs of Innocence. And the Songs of Experience do contain a good deal more of matter which complicates the picture of what created the universe, the picture of what God might be. And of course, to Blake, that God could be a terrible presence, as well as could be a giving presence. If you've never heard the poet Allen Ginsberg recite The Tyger by Blake, I strongly suggest you try to find that online. Probably if you look up Allen Ginsberg and Tyger, Tyger Burning Bright, you will, and it's probably even on YouTube. And he sings this song. I heard that once when I was maybe 18 or 19 years old. Wasn't even aware that I was a poet yet, or not too aware of what that might mean. But his Tyger, Tyger, burning bright in the forests of the night, did manage to convey Blake's power to me, and Blake's tuning in to some other power, as I think that Ginsberg had the ability to tune in to another power too. Anyway, The Tyger is not a complicated poem, but a poem which bears some deliberate thought about what Blake's relationship to poetry is, and to both the divine and the terrible. The other poem I want to look at is also, I think, one of the most complicated poems of Songs of Experience, and it's a poem titled London. And if you have a picture in your mind of, jolly London and a great place to visit, this is not that picture. This is London with every bit as much terror as that Tyger had, possibly more. London, overcrowded in the late 18th century, overcrowded, dirty, full of danger. It's also a place that's been bought and sold. The streets, even the river, is chartered, as though there's no freedom in this place. It's all controlled. There are soldiers that help control it, soldiers that help to make things run in blood down palace walls, even though those soldiers themselves are hapless. The church in London is blackening. The chimney sweepers, of course, are black themselves. And in midnight streets, one hears both the curse of a youthful harlot, someone who probably is chartered in some way herself and controlled and at the mercy of others. And you also hear a blast that is a newborn infant's tear, which blights with plagues the marriage hearse. The marriage hearse, marriage a hearse to such blights and plagues, and all of this in the same stanza, something with the harlot may blight with plagues the marriage hearse. There's also some plays in here on repetition, and even on letters, and letters of one stanza, the opening letter of the stanza forming a word. So let me read this poem, and then I'll point out some of those facets of it. William Blake, London. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. Okay, so first I'll point out just a little bit of repetition. In the second stanza, in every cry, in every infant's cry, in every voice, in every ban. So that forms a kind of a powerful rhythmic repetition. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear. Blake uses, it's basically a song structure, but in this case, a terrible kind of song. That stanza also ends with the word here. The first line of the last stanza, but most through midnight streets I hear, also ends with the word here. The next to last stanza, which is the third stanza, how the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. The first letters of each line in that stanza, the first letter of how, of every, of and of runs, form the word H-E-A-R, here, capitalized. So you have here at the end of a line, here capitalized at the beginning of lines in a stanza, here at the end of the next line, and then the very last word in the poem, hearse, which is H-E-A-R-S-E. London echoes with cries that are cries of pain, cries of fear, and cries in part caused by an industrial revolution which has created a moneyed class which charters or owns and carves out pieces to sell of every part of the street and the river, and which leaves those which are not capitalists who benefit from this industrial revolution as infants who are afraid, as chimney sweepers who, their average life was something like 12 or 13 years old, churches which seem black, soldiers who are also poor and hapless, and harlots and newborn infants who are not going to make it, as plagues on the marriage hearse. And those plagues are probably sexually transmitted diseases in this kind of filth. Blake just screams against the terrors of his time and knows full well to blame that on the economic conditions and on what causes those economic conditions. Blake is a brilliant, beautiful, visionary, powerful, and a poet who has his eyes on what we must pay attention to, and he tells us without doubt. I celebrate William Blake. I hope to get back to him at another podcast at some time. Thank you.